In grinding, what you would want is your coolant velocity to be the same as your wheel velocity. In a perfect world, what we would have is the velocity of the coolant exiting matching the velocity of the wheel. And what that means is the coolant can just kind of ride in to the pores of the wheel and get to the hot spot. So we could say the velocity of the coolant divided by the velocity of the wheel should be 1. That'd be in a perfect world. I don't always recommend that because sometimes you don't need good cooling. It's not worth bothering with, and sometimes good cooling can actually cause problems in terms of hydrodynamic push-off. But if you're doing creep feed grinding, that would be a good thing to aim for, or maybe 80% of your wheel velocity. Now, how do you know what coolant velocity you actually have? You can mess around with putting a pressure gauge on there, but one of the ways that I teach my customers when I do my grinding courses or when I visit them in my grinding boot camp is what I call the Ol Bucket Stopwatch Technique. And you take your nozzle, take a round nozzle, a flat nozzle, any nozzle. You take like a 5-gallon bucket, and what you do is you fill up that bucket. Get yourself a stopwatch and you say, okay, how long did it take for that one nozzle to fill up that 5-gallon bucket? Then you take the orifice area, a round nozzle, pi d squared over 4, a square nozzle, length times width, calculate the area, and then from those two you can figure out what actual flow rate is coming out of the nozzle. So let's take a look at the basic equations. So here's my nozzle, here's my bucket, my coolant is coming out of my nozzle and filling my bucket. And so my flow rate, and we'll do this in gallons per minute, GPM, is equal to my bucket size, or how much of that bucket that I filled, my bucket size in gallons, divided by my time to fill the bucket in seconds times 60. So let's say in my experiment I've got a 5-gallon bucket. Let's say in this one it took me 42 seconds to fill up that bucket. So 5 divided by 42 times 60 will give us 7.14 gallons per minute. Okay, so now coming out of this one nozzle, not all our nozzles, we just want to do it on one. Coming out of that one nozzle, we've got 7.14 gallons per minute. Now let's say we've got a basic round nozzle. Let's say that guy is 3/8 of an inch in diameter. So now let's go back to 4th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade geometry. Area in inches squared of my circular nozzle is pi times my diameter squared, diameter in inches, divided by 4. So my 3/8 inch nozzle is going to be pi times 3/8. Let's square that and divide it by 4. And that gives us an orifice area of 0.1104 inches squared. So now if I want to know my velocity in surface feet per minute coming out of there, I'm going to take my flow rate, so let's call that flow gallons per minute. We'll divide that by my area in inches squared, and then we multiply by the constant of 19.25. So in this case, we've got a flow rate of 7.14, an area of 0.1104. Multiply that by 19.25, and what we get, if we do that, is a value of, rounded up to 1245 surface feet per minute coming out of there. Okay, now what do we want to do with that? So now my wheel velocity, this guy is running at 8,000 surface feet a minute. I've got a nozzle here, and my coolant is coming out at 1245 surface feet per minute. So my velocity ratio, velocity of the cool divided by the velocity of the wheel, is 1245 divided by 8,000, and 1245 divided by 18,000 or 8,000 is 16%. So we're 16% of the way there. Some operations that's just fine. Some of the operations that's not good enough. If we're doing creep feed, we probably want to be at around 80% at least, maybe to 100%. If we're doing cylindrical OD, that might be good enough. Maybe we can improve that a little bit. But this is a very quick and easy way to figure out what your coolant velocity is, and all you need is a bucket and a stopwatch and some basic math to figure out how close you are to getting to the wheel speed.